Welcome back, readers, to Mystery in Rocky Mountain National Park. We are going to do part one of chapter 16, Fall River Road. It's a longer chapter, so it'll be in two parts. Uncle Brian rubbed his chin. So let me get this straight. You want to bicycle for 15 miles down a curvy mountain road that may or may not be covered in snow? Jake nodded and tried to read his uncle's face. His serious look split into a smile. Sounds fun. Uncle Brian looked over at the other two dads who were sitting in camp chairs and talking. I'll be right back. I've got an idea. All three of the kids breathed a sigh of relief. Amber smoothed her hiking pants with both of her hands and said, I was for sure he wasn't going to let us go. Moments later, Uncle Brian returned. We've decided to join you. I'm sure you three want to have your own adventure, so we'll bike down ahead of you. The plan required them to take two vehicles. Mr. Catalina would drive his truck to the bottom of Fall River Road and park at the nearby Indo Valley picnic area. That way, when they finished the 15-mile trip down the mountain, they could put their bikes in the back of his truck and return to the campsite. After he finished parking at Indo Valley, all six of them squeezed into Mr. Evans' truck to drive the 22 miles to the top of Trail Ridge Road. Jake had no idea the drive would be so captivating. After winding through the thick green forest, the road took them above the tree line into the alpine tundra, where fields of short green grass and white snow stretched for miles over the rolling mountain tops of the park. Wes stared out the window. He had been speechless for miles. This is crazy. There are no guardrails up here. You could just drive right off the side of the mountain if you weren't careful. Jake looked out the window and down into a deep valley. Wes was right. There was nothing that would stop a car from plunging over the edge and tumbling down the mountainside. That was unnerving. They just opened the Trail Ridge Road this week, Mr. Evans explained. It's closed about half of the year because of the snow. Look at that. He pointed out the window as the truck entered a long hallway of snow plowed to both sides of the road and stacked over 15 feet high. They passed the lava cliffs and drove through another cut in the rocks. Jake saw Amber staring at something. What's that? She pointed a finger out the passenger side window. Mr. Catalina also spotted the big white wool animals with their sharp jet black horns. Wow, they're either goats or sheep. He turned to Mr. Evans. Steve, do you mind pulling over so we can get some pictures? Sure thing. Jake's dad steered the truck into a pull-out part and parked. Amber was the first out, followed by Wes, then Jake. Are they the same as the bighorn sheep we saw the other day? Amber asked. No, the bighorn sheep are a brown color, her dad explained. These guys are bright white and kind of shaggy. Wes had pulled out his binoculars to get a closer look. Yeah, they look really different up close. He handed the binoculars to Amber. She peered through them. Their horns are spiky. The sheep we saw on the way in had big curly horns. A small brown animal scurried across the rocks beside them and disappeared into the ground. Did you see that? Jake pointed at the rocks. It looked like a groundhog. His dad saw it too. It's a marmot. Jake's eyes widened. Did you say marmot? Wes and Amber both turned to look at Jake. He knew they were thinking the same thing he was. That word. It was in the instructions from Mather. All we've learned has been entrusted to the marmot. That's what I said. Mr. Evans scanned the rocks to see if he could spot the animal again. They live up here above the tree line, and you're right. They are a kind of groundhog. Some people call them whistle pigs because of the sounds they make. Listen and you might hear them. Sure enough, the marmot started making a cheeping whistle sound. His dad put a hand on Jake's shoulder. Reminds me of your grandpa. A marmot reminds you of Grandpa? Sure does. His dad smiled and rubbed the palm of his hand over his jacket pocket, the one directly above his heart. He was always whistling. That was why his radio club gave him the handle, the Marmot. Wes and Amber both stared at Jake. Wes mouthed words to Jake silently. Your grandpa was the Marmot. Jake was at a loss for words. He took his hat off and ran his hand through his hair. Grandpa was the Marmot. Everything we've learned has been entrusted to the Marmot. Everything. His dad patted Jake on the back. Well, it's getting chilly up here. We should get a move on. They all got back into the truck, and a few minutes later they were at the top. The Alpine Visitor Center reminded Jake of the Alaskan survival shows his dad liked to watch on the Nature Channel. A series of stone buildings looked like they were thawing out from the winter landscape. Snow still covered the sides of the buildings up to the windows. The roof beams were made of long gray tree trunks. Enough snow had melted to expose their spear-like tips. After visiting the gift shop and restrooms, the dads lifted all their bikes out of the back of the truck. The kids found their packs and put on their jackets. Okay, we'll meet you at the bottom at noon. Mr. Evans secured the strap on his bike helmet and straddled his bike. That's plenty of time for you kids to stop at Willow Park. Keep track of the time and don't be late. He tapped his watch on his wrist. Got it, Jake said. As their dads raced off on the mountain bikes, Jake, Amber, and Wes discussed their plan. Jake had unfolded the map to study it one more time. So we go about 3 miles, then Willow Park should be on the third big curve. Cool, Wes replied. I've got the GPS so we can check the exact coordinates when we get there. All right, let's do this. Jake mounted his bike and pedaled in the direction their dads had gone. The dirt surface of Fall River Road was broad and empty except for the occasional patches of slushy snow. Most of the time, all three of them could ride side by side. This is the best, Wes yelled over the breeze. I already wish we could do this again. Me too, Amber yelled. She started pedaling faster, tearing through the dirt and pulling far ahead of the boys. She hit a small ramp of dirt at the edge of the road and caught some air. Whoa, Jake said, she is good. The boys pedaled faster to catch up. The wind blew through their hair and their open jackets flapped at the sides. Amber turned and yelled back, We're at the curves. They slowed down and turned into the first curve. Jake was still going really fast and his back tire started to slip out from under him. Somehow he was able to keep the bike upright. Amber noticed. Keep your weight over your back tire, she called out. Like this. She leaned back over her seat. That will keep you from slipping. Jake brought his bike alongside Amber. How do you know how to ride so well? My dad and I mountain bike a lot at this place near my house, she explained. I've got a bunch of ramps and stuff. Well, you're really, really good. She smiled. Thanks. They came to the third curve, stopped, and parked their bikes at the trees. Wes had brought a bike lock and wrapped it around the 3 bikes. Nobody is going to steal them, Wes. Jake glanced around at the forest and mountains surrounding them. They would need a car or something. Plus, I bet we are like the only people up here. I know, it just makes me feel better. Wes turned the dials on the lock and then pulled on the cable to make sure it was secure. They found a trail that led west into Willow Park. As they entered the woods, they could hear the sounds of a mountain stream. Within a few minutes, the trees gave way to a small clearing in an old log cabin. Wes was behind Amber and Jake, looking down at the GPS unit screen so he could follow it to the exact coordinates. Jake turned around to ask Wes how close they were and saw that his cousin was about to step into a giant pile of moose droppings. Wes, stop! Too late. Ah, Wes yelled. This is not helpful. He walked over to a mound of snow and began sliding his foot around in its cold, grainy surface, working as hard as he could to clean the poop off of his shoe. Amber and Jake looked at each other and tried not to laugh. We're going to stop there, and next time you'll join us for part 2 of chapter 16.